So Vance Gellert, you were with me on my Virgin trip down to the Amazon in 2006, which is documented in the book Irish Shamanic Odyssey. You've been going down to the Amazon for many years now, taking photographs of the curanderos, as well as the medicine in its native setting. Could you tell us a bit about your journey?
I'd be glad to, Rack. As you know, I'm a fallen away pharmacologist. And I was attracted to that field so long ago. I was in an organic chemistry class when I learned that mustard compounds could be used as a medicinal agent, that is mustard gas, a toxic poison used in World War I moved towards pharmacology, and just before I started, I had my first experience with LSD, and that was a mind opener, as it has been for almost everybody at this conference. And once in pharmacology, I think the real change came when I tried peyote for the first time and became aware that the real source of new drugs for our healing and health would be plant medicines. And that really began my journey. I knew then, while I was still a second-year graduate student in pharmacology, that the way to go would be to journey to the Amazon, following the footsteps of Richard Schultes, to find healers and understand ceremony and healing, ceremony and rituals involved in the production of these medicines, thinking that they might help us as pharmacologists understand how it could be brought into Western practice. So that began the journey. I finally got around to it. It was years later, but I got there. And the idea was to find these traditional healers, shamans, and interview them and find out what their thought was about the healing process and show me what they were doing. It was an amazing trip. And it's sort of, then I moved into ayahuasca because it was one facet of a very important overarching sort of healing process.
And so tell us about the challenge of there's many ways to take a photo, but there's this idea that you're capturing the essence of a soul. And when you're dealing with spiritual practitioners like the curanderos and ayahuasqueros, there was a story you told me earlier about taking a photo of Guillermo's mother. Could you maybe reiterate that story?
Yes, and that isn't the only magical one, but it seems to really illustrate the process so importantly. And it's interesting, we all know how to take a photograph, but it's really determined by the process of taking that photograph. I decided in this project to carry a 4x5 camera as well as a Hasselblad medium format film cameras. They're much harder to work with, but they slow down the process. So this was a morning after I had an ayahuasca ceremony with Guillermo's mother as well as her husband, who sang some of the most incredible Icaros I had heard in a session. And I went to interview him and photograph him. And then Maria was sitting in the doorway of her palapa. She was doing beadwork, and I asked her, could I do a portrait of you? She said yes, and I set up the 4x5 and had it all squared away, and I chatted with her for a second, and I went back to look at the ground glass, because in these cameras you compose and focus on a ground glass, and then you replace it with a film. And I went back, and it was all fogged up. So I looked around to the front of the camera, and I saw that the lens was fogged. And so, oh, well, it makes sense. We're in the jungle. Cleaned it off, went back to look at the glass again, and it was foggy looking. I went to the front of the camera. The lens was clean. So I took the lens off the camera, and it was fogged on the inside, which was like pretty curious. But okay, put it back on, went to look at the glass. Again, it was fogged. Looked at the front lens, it was clear. I said, it must be something else. I don't know what's going on here. So I took the photograph, I took several, and then as I was dismantling the camera, the lens on the inside was fogged again. I said, well, the only thing I was feeling better about is that I had overexposed the picture consciously because of her dark skin, and maybe whatever, we'll see what we got. And the interesting thing, I got back to Quitos, and I was talking, it was Alan Shoemaker, as a matter of fact, and I said, Alan, I just took a photograph of Guillermo's mother. And he said, I don't think you did. She won't let you. Well, the photograph that came out there's an aura of red around her. And I thought, maybe she wanted to control the photograph so that I would photograph her the way she felt about herself. However, but this is just one story of many that happened in the process of going through my journeys over, I guess I had a total of 6 journeys over several years, and to the far reaches of Bolivia the Amazon basin to the Andes Mountains, and it kept reoccurring. These people would share with me their stories, but it was as if they knew the camera was getting it, even though I was sort of like, I got credit for showing up, basically.
Vance, could you tell us a bit about the picture that's on your right-hand side behind you?
It's threatening collapse.
That's better. Vance, could you tell us just a bit about the picture that's just behind you on your right-hand side there? It's a 100-year-old ayahuasca vine.
I'm not an estimator of the ages of vines. It was old. It was about, I think I'd gone up the river, up the Amazon, or the Ucayali as it was called, as it changes to after Iquitos, with a guide, and he was engaged by Ron Wheelock to go up the river to find better stocks of ayahuasca, because it was getting picked through in Iquitos. So we went up the river, and I went along with Juan Maldonado, the guide, because he had been working with me and guiding me to various healers, not just shamanic or ayahuasqueros, but healers in general, traditional healers, which is really the base of my work. And we got up there, we stayed in this village, Tres Unidos, and he engaged a number of people to go out and harvest the vines. The next morning, he came to me and says, hey, some of these guys came to me and said we should come down to Soledad and see what they found. And we did, and the first person I saw was a shamanic healer and his wife, beautiful couple, and then they guided me over to this particular vine, and I had never seen anything like it. I mean, the way it came up out of the ground and did that full twist and then into the sky. So I set up various cameras, took a number of photographs, and then as I walked away, I heard the harvesters and their machetes as they chopped up the vine, and every blow of the machete I could feel. I was just realizing what was happening here. But the magic, I think, really comes down to the fact that that vine was giving up its soul to enrich ours. And I was so thrilled that I was chosen to make a photograph of this particular plant.
Vance, one last question. You're actually featured in the film Aya Awakenings, because you were, my comrade in arms on the road and the Voyage of the Soul. What do you think of the film, and does it capture some of the essence of our journey?
The film was beautiful. As you know, I was almost beside you every step of the way, and to see how the experiences we had together were translated into that film for everybody was absolutely incredible. It was intense for me, just sitting there watching it. Maybe some of it was the memory of it coming back, because I was there. But I really think you conveyed that for everybody in that audience that wasn't there, that same experience, that same feeling. So that I am in awe of your work, Barack. That was an amazing job. I know the hard work involved, and you did it.
Vance Gellert, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.